All right, we're all here. It is 7:31. This is June 30th. This is the St. Mark Street Park Working Group. Present we have Marguerite Landry, Andrew Dennington, Kevin Miller, who is new, Grant Farrington, Frederica Gillespie, who is a new member also, and James Nichols Worley. No one is absent. The first thing I would like to do, if we could, is just table until next time James's minutes, if that's okay with everybody, because I wasn't able to send them out until a few hours before the meeting, and I think it would be better if we waited until next time. Is that okay with everybody?
It's okay with me.
I mean, James, they look wonderful, but I think we could use just a little more time to.
And then I'll have the meetings for the last meeting because that's the second to last meeting also ready, so we can approve all of those minutes. And
Okay, so
this
that's
meeting, of course.
May 26th. Okay, good. You rule totally, I gotta say. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we'll table that if it's okay with everybody.
One just quick thing. I think I am okay with it, but just as a note, if it's more than 45 days since the meeting, we'll probably get a warning letter from the town clerk's office requesting that we approve the minutes. So if we don't approve it today, we'll probably get that. But that's
is that 45 days from the 19th of May?
Oh, is it the 19th? I thought it was the 11th.
I think we might have already. Okay, good.
No, and that warning letter, full confession, that warning letter was for the April 28th minutes, which we edited and accepted, and they sat on my hard drive until I realized that I had not forwarded them to the town clerk.
Okay, so yes, I would be okay to table them.
Mea culpa. If you're okay. Now, do we need to vote on that? Or are we just gonna censor the meeting? Vote to table. I move that we table the minutes until our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor: Landry, Dennington.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't a party to those meetings.
Exactly, so. Exactly. Okay. And James?
Aye.
Grant?
Aye.
And Frederica?
I'll abstain.
Okay, all right. So we'll table both of those, and we'll table both those minutes until next time.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Bill. God, forgive me. You're off the top of my screen. Anyway, okay. So we'll table those until next time. I please ask our new members, Freddie Gillespie and also Kevin Miller, to just introduce themselves briefly to the rest of the working group. Freddie, do you want to start?
Sure. Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Southborough Open Space Preservation Commission. And the commission had written a support letter for the pollinator gardens on this project when it first was submitted to the state, which helped it receive funding. Although, to be clear, we never played a role in design of those gardens. And, but we, as a commission, adhere to the original concept that this would be all native plants, not that it's in the same design as before, and that's something that's very critical to our mission as an open space preservation commission. So that's that.
Thank you, and I would hope to return to open spaces hand in this project later on in this meeting, if that's okay, or would you rather talk about it now?
No, I'm not sure where the committee is, so I think it would be more worthwhile to have more discussion before I weigh in on anything.
Okay, good. And maybe the other members, in addition to myself, could ponder questions for you, if that's okay. If we can question you about your concepts for the space, that would be extremely useful. At least I think so. All right. And also, Kevin, could you tell us something about your your involvement in this space so far.
Well, sure. Thank you, Marguerite. I'm happy to join a group that I really admire. And of course, I've watched, and in many cases participated watched all and participated, I believe, in most, modestly, I hope, of your meetings. I'm the chair of the Historical Commission. Of course, we've been involved in this from the beginning, and primarily focused on our interest in seeing the ground investigated archaeologically, which it, of course, is on track to have that done by the archaeological firm that St. Mark's has retained. And so we look forward to, the results of the dig and the sort of clearing the field, so to speak, in terms of knowing with a certainty what's there or what isn't there. What else do you want to know, Marguerite?
So when's it going to be done?
Well, I look back at my notes on this, and it was on June 6th, I believe, 7th, that St. Mark's was, signing the letter of intent or the contract with the firm that they were hiring. It's a company called Archaeological Consulting Services out of Guilford, Connecticut. And my understanding from the CFO of St. Mark's, Rob Kuklovich, who, I've had very cordial dealings with, is that from that point, from June 6th, it was going to take about 2 weeks to put together the application. It's a 40-page application that goes to the state, 30 to 40 pages. They expected a month reply time from the state. So we would, right now, for instance, as we sit here on June 30th, hopefully we're somewhere in that window where the state is reviewing the application, because I haven't heard otherwise, but I would assume it went in a timely way, because they certainly want to move. Once the approval is granted, I was told that to expect about a week of field work, with heavy equipment, with perhaps the archaeologist or the team being on site, a bit before and clearly a bit after. But of course, that's all contingent upon what they find or don't find. And then finally, it would take some time to write up a report. And the expectation was 3 months from that date to have in other words, from the signing of the contract to the complete report. So my understanding that the expectation was about Labor Day to have the final report, although I think I pointed this out on a select board call, that I think there's a possibility we might have an indication that would help this process sooner than that. In other words, the archaeologist, I'm mangling that, can turn to us and say, yeah, we found stuff, or no, we didn't find stuff, before the actual report is complete and on paper and handed over. I mean, I wouldn't go too far with that, because I don't know what the state is going to oversee this. And so I don't know what requirements they have. The commission intends, incidentally, to invite the head of the firm that's going to do the work and to speak, to explain the process to us. And once I can get that scheduled, I think it would be great if working group members could, come over and watch and ask questions. And because I think it would be really good. I want this person to come and talk to the Historical Commission so we can learn some stuff. So my colleagues here on the working group can learn some stuff. And so the townspeople can learn, what this process is going to entail, because I think that would really help make a lot of folks feel better, to know exactly what the process was and how it was going to be undertaken, and how the possible results might be interpreted and what the process is for that, because I don't know how it works. I'm not an archaeologist. So when I have that information, I'll certainly bring it over here with the invitation that you all come and ask questions as well.
Would it be appropriate to be a program at the library?
Quite possibly. I mean, the principal, of course, they're down in Connecticut, and I don't know, I would anticipate it being a Zoom in kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm.
But the invitation, I want to make contact in part to offer whatever help the historical commission could offer with regard to, let's say, getting any documentation that might help the firm from the Historical Society. Of course, the project site is a stone's throw from the museum and their resources. So, it was just going to be, an effort to reach out and say, can you explain what you're going to do for us, and can we help any? And welcome to town kind of thing. And so we get, and if that person is, willing to actually physically come and speak at the library, I'll certainly extend the invitation on your behalf, and then hand it over to you.
I think it would be fascinating to learn about how that works, and I think there'd probably be quite a few people who would feel the same way.
You know what? I mean, especially when their team is actually here and on site and doing work. I mean, I think we could pack the library for an evening, explaining this. And it would be wonderful, publicity, educational for the town, good publicity for the firm, good PR for St. Mark's, so that's my hope.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we have sort of it's in flux, but it's all positive.
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. That's great.
Yeah, it's just that, it's a matter of time now. Andrew, you haven't heard any updates beyond what I said.
What I've heard is just consistent with what you said, that you're really looking at maybe like August to have this work done, and then just this rough ballpark of like Labor Day.
So it sounds wonderful, and we have no idea whether it will end up excavating all the way over to Route 85 and all the way over to Fay School, or whether it will be limited in one area. We don't know. They'll have to figure out what they're doing. Well, this sounds wonderful. The next agenda item, in fact, the main agenda item, is to review and discuss the revised charge. Andrew, do you want to do that and
Sure.
fill us in on where we are, and also maybe discuss the DPW and the designing of the
Yes.
area? Thank you.
So the two things that I'm going to talk about are the revised charge. Is everyone familiar with the revised charge? Okay, so, and a copy has been circulated, just a one-page document. And the most significant change is that, as you'll remember, the first charge, aside from the, addition of people and the changes in the composition, was to make a recommendation about how to fill that circular space in the center of the design drawing that was that's been the operative one from June 24, 2021. And I think one of the things that came out of our prior meetings is a lot of stakeholders had some questions, concerns, criticisms of that design. And I think that the select board was open to having a more, community driven process of having open to having a changes in the design. So now the overriding purpose of this group, let me pull it up again, is to generate a written recommendation to the select board regarding the design and themes for the proposed park that will be constructed between the library and the reconstructed intersection of St. Mark Street and Route 85. The select board is particularly interested in placing a monument or marker in the space that would recognize and honor Native American history in Southborough. So that's what the mission is and the timetable. I don't think there's a set deadline in here, but I believe at the select board meeting where we approved this, that the target is, September. And so then the connection between that first thing and this news, I think from today, which I think is very positive, is I spoke earlier today with Karen Galligan, who's the DB2 superintendent, about providing some, technical assistance to our group. And I have been put in touch with a landscape architect from VHP, which is the engineering firm which put together the original plans for this park. And I think as a next step, what I'm hoping is that we can invite this gentleman, his name is Michael Kluchman, Kluchman, to participate with us. And how an idea I have is, for example, Bill has a handwritten sketch. Kevin, are you familiar with this sketch? And Freddie as well? I can show it to you. Okay. So, obviously this is just a handwritten drawing that Bill did or did, and it shows, I thought the value of it was having different areas of the park that serve different purposes, right? One, open space. Another is kind of a gathering area that could be used in conjunction with the library. And then also place for some type of a historical educational marker. And so anyway, just to complete my thought here, I think that one thing we could do is, if other people have other ideas, maybe we could work with this gentleman to see if he can then create some mock-ups or renderings based off some of the ideas which are thrown out here, and then maybe multiple different designs, concepts, and then the group can discuss, I like this, I don't like that. I do think that reintegrating the history walk in a very clear, tangible way into this design should be a goal. And since we have people here who are from the SPAC, Southborough Public Accessibility Committee, Open Space Preservation Committee, Historical Commission, Board of Library Trustees, and Select Board, and St. Mark's School, that it hopefully having a productive discussion from us can result in then working with Mr. Kluchman, a design that people feel more invested in and feel like they've had some contribution to. So I see that Freddie has her hand up, but she's muted.
I'm unmuted. Yeah. I just wanted to throw something out that's a little bit different than what you just presented, Andrew. I've attended numerous charrettes, workshops, conferences on public space planning through my Open Space Commission work, as well as, I've been doing this for 20 years. I can't tell you how many different ones of these I've participated in. And my preference, but I'm only one member, would be, it sounds like coming up with plans and then we choose and pick and choose what we want, is like doing the master plan and coming up with what's going to be in it before you figure out what the goals are. And I'd prefer to start with a whiteboard and say, what do we want this? I don't have a preconceived idea. I know there's certain things we all want in there. The history walk is in there, so it's an open space parcel. This isn't just for native plants. I wanted to be clear. The Open Space Commission has been involved in numerous, not just preserving open space, but participating in design of, say, the Triangle Park, other parts, the playground at the South Union School. So trying to figure out and fit things in and be like having a preconceived idea, to me, where I would start is you have the perimeters, a blank white sheet, you know, north, south, east, west, the measurements, and then leave it blank until we decide what do you want to have in there as a committee, a working group, before you start shuffling things around and trying to.
Okay,
squeeze them
Freddie,
in.
can I just jump in here for a second?
Mhm.
And I respect what you're saying, and I know you'd mentioned the whiteboard thing before. We have been basically whiteboarding since February or early March. And based on what we, see if you can come up with more than this, okay? The stakeholders want, one, the history walk should be happening. It should have full accessibility. There should be a library area or an area for programs, and it should include open space plantings. Now, is there anything that I've left out of those 4 items that we would like this park to have?
I think that's a fair.
Oh, no,
statement.
wait, stop, the memorial, right,
Yes, yeah,
okay.
So
Is there
I'm not
anything
opposed to-
that's not included there that, in that list of 5 things?
the 5 things are fine, but what I saw in the sketch was way too much stuff, and I think you need to visit the underutilized park on the south.
Well,
South
okay,
Hill
but
Road.
this is but as far as whiteboarding it and what the various stakeholders, including just about everybody in town, we think those 5 elements are non-negotiables for what we think should be in that space, and how we get to that, that's going to depend on talking to people who've done this before and having them come up with alternatives that we can look at. But
So-
those 5
Well,
things, I
I-
think, are it.
It was my first time talking, so I don't disagree. When I say a
Mhm.
whiteboard, I just mean, I don't want to be looking at a plan. Those are the concepts that go in. Let's start with a blank slate and see how they fit in.
Right.
We have 2 new members here. I mean, I've heard lots of different things, like what you, in addition to what you just said, Marguerite.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a stage, some sort of what do you call that, an amphitheater. There's been a gazebo, you know, those are different
That's
things.
under the heading of public use. Public meetings, a space for public gatherings.
Marguerite, I would just,
I just don't want to be squeezing and shaping things around that's already been decided. You've already looked at a plan before I got here.
What do you mean? Bill's sketch?
Yeah,
No,
do we all
Bill's
design our
sketch
own
was,
sketch? and
Bill's
throw them in?
sketch was very useful in that it said the VHB sketch is not locked in stone. And based on Bill's sketch, where we saw some things that we thought the VHB didn't have in it, VHB or Karen and the Board of Selectmen said they were willing to be flexible on revisiting a design. So Bill's sketch was extremely useful in that sense. It was saying, okay, there are maybe other ways we can do this.
I'm
Can,
just
can
saying
I
I'd like
make
to be
a,
a part of the other ways of doing it and not have to.
Not have
can I
to,
make a suggestion here that's, I don't think there's really, there's that much different here, so maybe another like important point now that we have all 7 here of this meeting, which, you know, I think can be pretty short, is just selecting some convenient times for our next meetings, right?
Mhm.
But then I'm happy to take a stab at, I think I already have this on my computer, it's a document that basically just says, right, what you said, Marguerite, and it's just in bullet point form. We could put that up and then just talk about it. And then Freddie, Kevin, if you have any other suggestions of things that you think are relevant. I mean, obviously the first meeting with the architect, there wouldn't be any plans. He could be here and listen to our different ideas. And then I really think like seeing mock-ups, that's gonna really be the most tangible way of seeing if we're headed in a good direction or a bad direction. I'm a pretty just visual, concrete
right.
learner. And that's what was good about what Bill did, is he actually took out just made a drawing, and I agree with you. I have the same concern. Is it are we trying to do too much in a relatively small space? I mean, someone that has some expertise and this could really give you some good practical advice about whether that's true or not.
Can I say,
It'd be helpful.
I just would like to, I've never been presented with the outline of the space. When you look at it there, you've got the road and then the parking lot beyond and then the dug up area. It's really hard for me to visualize what the boundaries are that we're working with. How many feet on the east and on the west?
Well,
And, you know,
that's why we need a landscape architect to talk to us, and why I hope the VHB team meeting will include us in there. What was the date on that, Andrew?
but didn't Bill start out
They
with
were going to
one?
meet
We
with
don't
the
have a meeting yet.
DPW.
We'll set something up. I mean, first we can find some dates that were available.
Mm-hmm,
Kevin,
right.
I'm trying to read your facial expressions. I can't see. What do you think of this?
That's
Good
always a dangerous thing, Andrew. Well, I guess I understand where Freddie's coming from, in the sense that I, for instance, just for my own sake, I don't want to be the person advocating for my little piece of the turf. Like everybody gets, this is you'd hate to see a park that was a kind of mulligan stew of everybody getting, get to throw in their little piece, and how we're to divide this up so everybody puts something in that they want. And you end up with a kind of mishmash that really serves no one. So, let's say, for instance, from the Historical Commission standpoint, and the idea of the whole business of the history walk, well, that's kind of problematic for me, because, I mean, when you step back from that, you think, well, what are we talking about here? And I understood there was discussion in the select board about, that a clarification, I suppose, right? Andrew, correct me when I'm wrong here, but that from the state grant maker standpoint, the sidewalks that have already been built or that are contemplated qualify. And the only part of the history walk that is unbuilt is the so-called cross-country part, which I took to be the part that would actually traverse the yet to be built park. Am I right about that?
I don't know really how to answer your question, other than that I think from everyone I've talked to, people like the idea of the history walk, and there would seem to be consensus. So why not?
Well, yeah,
Let's do
I know,
it.
I do too. What I would say is that a history walk in Southborough is going to be something that, would lead you to, right, perhaps a series of markers or guideposts or
Yes.
QR code kind of things that elucidate, the many wonderful things we have in downtown. The kind of ironic spin on the issue with the park and the history walk is that I have no idea what's historic about that ground at this point, if anything.
Well, if I can interject, I don't know if
Sure.
you're interrupting you, but okay, we don't need to decide the exact contents of what
Right.
in my opinion, that's too complicated.
Right.
And the charge is really just design themes, design elements of like a basic concept, right? So I agree with your concern about be wary of trying to do too many things. I mean, one thing that I'm kind of coming around to was, I mean, I was really the person more at some of the initial meetings thinking of, well, maybe this could be a place where there's some type of a structure that provides shade and would be I mean, actually, I thought one thing that was interesting was in Marguerite, just happening driving by, was it Bolton and saw the Bolton Town Common, and you see some examples of some circular parks in center of New England towns that are actually quite just open. And that's actually, I found that kind of attractive. So that's something that might kind of just declutter it. But just coming back to history walk, I actually think that irrespective of what this archaeological survey finds, I think it's very significant that, this is a space which borders the old burial ground. And I think to a lot of, your credit and the credit of the Historical Commission and the Historical Society, people have really learned more about the old burial ground. And there's just a way that this park can be used that enhances and makes people, it's a space where people can come to just appreciate history. And I mean, the thing I continue to say, almost it's like a half in jest, is that just how slow this process is working, is that at least by I'm excited at the idea of by the tricentennial, right? The 2037 300th year anniversary of Southborough, that if there is a completed space there, that I think that's an interesting concept of right next to the old burial ground, which dates from like the early 1700s. You have a space which architecturally, fits in with it, but also highlights some more other parts of history that haven't gotten as much attention.
Marginalized peoples, right? Go ahead.
Do you agree?
I want to chime in. I agree with most of that, I think, but I think I see what Kevin's getting at. It would be like putting like a historical marker for a Market Basket parking lot. But I just think that any plaques in the park, maybe they don't have to be about that specific land itself if an archaeological survey doesn't find anything there, but it could be maybe history of the town that we couldn't really fit in a specific location elsewhere.
I agree.
Kevin, would that help alleviate some of the concern that it be like an empty historical space?
Yeah, it's not. Please don't mistake my whatever for like concern or I'm just here to take it in and kind of grow with the group and stuff. I guess the one thing I will say is that personally, the most appealing idea that I've heard was, when sort of Dan Blanchard was talking about this idea of burials in Southborough, not necessarily there, but throughout town, that have been unmarked and unrecorded. And this idea of indentured servants and the fact that there were slaves in Southborough, which is, for a lot of people, a revelation. The indigent Native Americans, forgotten burials, and that this might be a place of sort of quiet contemplation and to remember those that society has sort of forgotten and left behind. I was when I heard this on one of your meetings, I was really quite moved by it in a way, because I thought it was a very inclusive, broad-minded way of thinking about it, and that it could. I personally am in favor now, and I'm very much open to be swayed and my mind changed. I want to make that clear. But I'm personally in favor of kind of the lightest, gentlest, most delicate footprint we could lay down there. It's someplace that it was natural to begin with, and the most we can do to restore it to a kind of gentle, natural state, still a park, so it still qualifies and satisfies those requirements, but something, I don't know, I think of it as a quiet, dignified space. And I would note, as the last thing I'll say, is that I think there's some use in taking a kind of holistic view and a broader view of that whole area downtown. For instance, we already have what should be, and it's pretty good, but it could be better, a very lovely gathering spot there called the Town Green. I and my wife are among the few people ever to sit on those benches right out front of the Pilgrim Church, in front of the townhouse. And it's quite lovely, except when it's hot, because there's no real shade there. And I think, it's worth thinking about in a kind of a more holistic sense of what do people do down there? Where will they sit? What are they there to enjoy? I like to go to the War Memorial down there with all the flags and look at it. I think it's really nice. I walk through the old burial ground all the time. I walk through the Burnett burial ground, which is even more special to me, like somehow, because it's very shady and secluded and it feels kind of wonderful in there. And the history walk would take you all around that stuff, but I just don't know what is really in that triangle yet. I look forward to the results. But meanwhile, I personally, as someone who uses those spaces quite a lot, I try to think about it again in a sort of broader sense of what will people do down there? What will attract them? And if we have an opportunity here, what would we put there that would be really special? You know, there's a story walk, there's a little herb thing. I think that's Freddie's domain. And, you know, there's all this stuff down there. So I don't think it's a bad idea just to try to think. One last thing is that I know that the charge talks about, you know, getting citizen input. I put it out there as a modest idea, and you all can tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe while we sort of wait for the results of the archaeological survey, we could actually hold a public hearing and ask people in town what they want instead of us, you know, trying to guess. I mean, we're all smart people. We can all take a good guess and bring our own 2 cents to the table. But maybe one of the public hearings that we're apparently supposed to have could take place in July.
All right. So
Or maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe the results of the dig should, you know what I mean? Because I do worry about like stirring up a lot of silt, so to speak, before the dig is done, because the dig is going to tell you a lot. Depending on what the dig is, it might change a lot of minds about what should be there or should not be there. So anyway, I'll shut up.
No, these are good. I would love to hear from Bill, and I would love to hear from Grant at this point, and also James. I mean, we're monopolizing the airwaves here, not in a negative sense, but you know, historically, you have a lot to tell us, definitely. But Bill, what do you think? And Grant, what do you think? James.
I know I have an idea in mind. Grant, I want to hear you first.
No, I think this has been a productive conversation. I agree that I think it makes sense now that we have, you know, a new group, somewhat of a new committee, a new charge to, you know, reconsider. Not that we actually came to a decision beforehand, but to, you know, take the time now to consider what we want. I think, Andrew, I think it's great, you know, potentially having that landscape architect or designer to come visit us, but I'm not sure about, or, you know, I'm not sure about it happening so soon. I don't know when you were thinking about like next meeting or anything like that. But I feel like we, as a newly constituted group, kind of have some questions to figure out about what we would want to use the space for. And, you know, I feel like if we were to invite for example, at our next meeting, if we were to invite the landscape architect, then we were saying like, hey, what if you put, you know, an amphitheater here? What you know, what would it look like if you do a stage or something? Then that could just get kind of bog us down, I think. But maybe perhaps once we come to some sort of better understanding of what we all want to see there, then that would be a good idea, I think. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now. So yeah.
James?
Yeah, so on that point of what we want to see there, I have an idea for how we go about that. I recently, in the past few weeks, it's funny actually, for a paper I was writing for class, was looking at how like groups of citizens go about like different civic processes in states like California and Washington. And so one of the big things I noticed is that when they're coming up with plans, they have a set of ordered priorities, so that if one thing needs to be done and it's incompatible with another thing, you are absolutely certain on which one you're going to do. So I think that if we're going to come up with any recommendations, if we're going to come up with things we want to see, especially if we're going to be talking with an expert architect who knows the limitations of what can fit in a park, that we should create a list of our priorities, like what is most important to us, so we can avoid any, haggling or difficulties over anything that needs to come before something else.
I agree.
Well, I think the biggest priority would be putting the new St. Mark's street down. That's
I
number
think
one,
that's
right?
beyond our purview a little bit.
Well, yeah, that's not really a priority for us, right?
Do you really think like that? I don't disagree with anything that's said, and maybe just as a suggestion that maybe I should not be the person to take the first draft of the, even though it seems like there's a lot of agreement about what is like a bullet point list of the priorities, ordered priorities for this space. I mean, I was volunteering to just put together something to just show up or share a screen at the next meeting, and people can tear it apart and blah blah blah. But if someone wants to be the first to do it instead,
Well, Andrew, it was quite a long time ago now. I can't remember when it was when we last met, but I think you had an idea quite a few meetings ago about us all coming up with a list of what we want to see or what we don't want to see in the park, and coming together and talking, coming
Yeah.
back with some homework. And I quite like that, to see where we're at.
I already have my list ready to go. So it's just,
Okay.
you want to have a meeting next
I
month to just compare
met with
lists.
the numbers. Yeah.
Kevin, just to like, if I can just respond to, I think what you're saying by intentionally exaggerating, I think what you're saying, and then just one thing that there's this tension, right? About, okay, there's this archaeological study that's going to be done. You don't know the results of it until September, right? So, I mean, you could say, well, we should just do nothing for 3 months because that's significant and we should just wait with that. Fine. I think that we've already met enough times that, and there's not really, just the process of talking and thinking about what this could be used for, and even just getting the concept plans is not that, you can do that and then that's available in September. And then if the results of the study come back and they're very significant, you can just revise that. We're not really committing to anything.
I agree
So
with
do
you.
you agree with me that we should make some progress?
Andrew, I agree with you entirely.
Okay.
I don't see any harm in doing that. It's just
Yeah.
with the understanding that it's contingent upon, it may well be contingent upon what's
Yeah.
found, not found. Sure.
Well, if I can just jump in here for a second. One of the reasons for the park is to improve library drainage. So there are 3 more drainage systems in there that are already in place, which are affecting how it's gonna look. And another reason for that park is to move the road. So those 2 things right there, they're not exactly wish list things, but those are number 1 and number 2 in terms of the engineering of what's going in there.
And Marguerite, can I ask, just for my own information,
Hmm.
has the library had drainage issues? Like, is that a parking lot thing?
We have had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to our collections over the last, since 1989, when that addition was built in. And currently Karen, God bless her, has managed to run our drainage system down into the stormwater for Route 30 now. But before that, we were getting wet floors, wet books, and the insurance company, I swear to God, I don't know why they continued to insure us, except that it was the state insurance company, because we had so much damage over and over and over. So one of the things you will see if you go to look at the triangle is there are 3 sinkholes built in there to get water off the hill above the library. So that is one reason for the park getting engineered the way it is. The other is, of course, the road, so that there can be the increased parking lot for St. Mark's. And those are, those are important. The history walk was part of the grant application. It's not necessary. Be nice. The library would like to do story hours there. It's not necessary. Be nice. Memorial be nice. But basically, it's the drainage and the road, as I understand it.
But can I jump in for a second on what Marguerite's talking about and respond to Kevin, which I hadn't heard before? I'm
Sure.
in a lot of agreement with what Kevin, how he portrayed it. And I'm just going to throw this out there as an idea. My perspective is that often what people, when you said where you can contemplate and peaceful and have some, connection to our history. When I was thinking about this area, why will people go there? And where you see people, and I want to drive by that common you were talking about, Marguerite, to see that example in Bolton, but where I look at a lot of parks and people like a nice open grassy area with benches and shade.
I agree.
And if you put what my point about the triangle down on by Fitzy's and the train station is, everyone wanted a lot of things and it's got a lot of things and no one goes there. And sometimes too much is just too much. And people, you can have benches, but then people can also put a blanket down. You can have, as you know, well, you may not know, but the Open Space Commission believes we need to have reduced lawns, but that's for 1 acre of lawn that no one uses. There are areas where you do need lawn, and a park is one of those places where people can sit, put a blanket or a chair, and if there's going to be a bigger event, but also have benches that set up places with shade. But people like wide open spaces, even though you bring in little areas with trees. And one thing we keep saying about the history walk, it is, the history walk is a history, I see it more as a history stop, right? Because you can't have a whole walk in that little park. So what would that mean? And you come up with some ideas of a marker or having a focus of what is important for there, but it's a stop. And maybe one of the things you could do to make it significant and have continuity is have it be the starting spot of how you get through town on this most historic area. That's just an idea, but also, the idea of the indigenous and slave and other people who weren't allowed in the burial ground to be, memorialized there. All of those things, I don't see that takes away from having a calm, open place where people like to go, because that's the type of place people like to go and sit at. And,
Just-
having some trees and landscaping, but that's my take. And of course, making it all absolutely accessible. That is critical and has to be for any way you're traveling through there, or where you're going and sitting, or what types of activities there are, but something smaller can be, if you have a focal point, like the chessboard in the front of the library, something big, that could be the one focal point where people could get around and do some, as an activity. It doesn't have to be tons and tons of things. I'm not saying that exactly, but lots of space for the libraries, like they had somebody do bubbles, and how many people were there? There wasn't a space to be seen at the library to park, and there was nothing there except for somebody bringing bubbles, I think, or balloons, or I forget what it was. Do you remember, Marguerite, recently?
I think it was bubbles, but to build on what you're saying, Freddie, and I totally agree, is that the library story hour is now on top of the septic tank. That septic system is that big bulge where they have to have those programs, and it's too hot in the
Right.
summer. It's too hot, and the
So-
kids get sick from the heat. We need to move them into a place that has some shade, like those trees. Exactly. So the
So saying-
library would love to be able to have a space that was a little cooler.
So we just had a garden tour of the new pollination preservation garden at the library, phase 1. And it was Saturday, it was way too hot.
Yeah.
And we had everyone go stand under the trees in the shade. And they stood there but it was wide. I mean, even though we were under the trees, the area was open. You know, there was a feeling of
Right.
openness because we were in the shade, but you could look over to the garden. And then of course people walked around, but it really, that sort of an atmosphere is what people like, and people hung around. So, and the shade made a lot of difference, but you don't have to have nonstop trees. And I know there's also a concern about noise, which you can deal with without too much. But I'm just thinking sometimes a saying my sister always says is less is more. And
So am I hearing as a subtext here that people think with these 5 elements it will be too cluttered? Like it's doing too many things? Because I'm not seeing that.
no, I'm not. I'm thinking if you have where I had my gut reaction at first was when there was like, and I haven't seen all this, the sketches and stuff, but that there was going to be an amphitheater and there was going to be a pavilion and there was going to be a stage. And I'm like, why would people go there for those things
No,
when there's
we
other
were
places
we were
in town?
throwing things out. We were throwing things out as ideas, and some of them stuck and some of them didn't.
Well, I
I just
wouldn't know.
want
I just
to
heard.
comment that I completely agree. Oh, sorry for me. I completely agree. I think something important is that park is a good place to exist in, you know, that people feel comfortable maybe just staying there for an extended period of time. If you know, someone wanted to check out a book from the library and then go read outside, that they'd be somewhere comfortable to sit and read. So yeah, I completely agree. We should focus on just simplicity and yeah, less is more.
Agreed. Bill, I haven't heard anything from you tonight.
Unusual, isn't it? Let me try to rehash some of the stuff that we have already discussed, both for our own benefit and for the benefit of some of the individuals who might not have been in those meetings. I think one of the things that was of concern to us was that the library being, I should say, the park being in back of the library and being next to a major road was going to be one of those areas where we would spend money that nobody would use it. It would be hidden, and there would be no purpose necessarily for going there unless you had gone to the library and you were parked in the parking lot and you wanted to go over and read for a second. But the idea was to join that area to a major downtown area. And so the concept was, and here's the history walk that came into it, that the concept was to provide a mechanism to walk from the town common area there in front of the church and over where the cannon is in that small park, to walk from there by various memorials like the memorial for soldiers, and have a purpose for doing that, which would lead you back to an area which could accommodate a number of different activities, not just one, but multiple activities. They don't have to be, doesn't have to be specifically designed for those activities, but those activities could heuristically grow in that area. And one of the concepts we talked about was, because we knew there were historical elements that we wanted to focus on in town. We didn't know the specifics of it, but we knew they were there. And so we definitely wanted, without having damage to the existing graveyard, we wanted basically to have an area where, in fact, a history walk, among other things, could lead and culminate in, let's say, some more specific design than just a walk itself. And furthermore, could linked to the historical museum, which is up in back of the townhouse. That was one purpose. I think we had another purpose for programs, and we had listened to the library talk about the need for a place to have readings with children, or et cetera, et cetera. And we thought that would be a good idea to also have a place like that within the park itself. And then beyond that, we basically said, oh, there may be other things which could evolve in this area too, especially if in fact we had permission to use the parking area that St. Mark's was going to put in place for town events of varying kinds. And so one could have plays, concerts, you name it. We didn't have a concept here specifically about what could evolve there. You could have lectures there also. But the point would be that there would be some more formal area where they could meet or display their activities. Now, we also said, I think, after standing in the park for some period of time and listening to the traffic, that all this quiet contemplation was going to be more difficult with trucks, cars, et cetera, rolling by. And so we said, oh, we also have to have some mechanism to mitigate the sound within that area, so we could have an area which quiet contemplation, program development, et cetera, could occur. And therefore, we came up with concepts that we needed a horticultural plan that would put basically a sound shield in place, as well as accommodate other elements that could be put in the park itself. And it doesn't have to be specifically this could be unjoined. The horticultural elements would be something that could potentially go up into the historical area and vice versa. And the program development could also be there. There was also in my mind, when it came to ADA class requirements, is we've got to do something about that children's story hour at the library. That today is, we simply are going to have to do something about it because it's not accessible to the disabled. And we have several disabilities that I think the ADA committee or the SPAC committee consider, but it's just, it needs an improvement. If we were going to put an historical walk, we could also then put a story walk in the same venue along the same area, for example. And I guess that's kind of the concept that we rolled around. Grant gave us presentations about historical walks, which I think were excellent. And we should probably consider those. Other towns have done that sort of thing. We should consider those things. All those were platforms on which we could build, but the committee itself, I think my sense was that the committee didn't have the specific knowledge about what we wanted to do in these various areas, and that we would have to engage other organizations to be somewhat specific about what was going to go there. From a horticultural point of view, from a history point of view, the library would have to have some input. And we would certainly want to consider maybe even with recreation, what that little area could be used for, and ask them if there were various things that they would like to see that they could help us organize and fill. It's a small area. There's no question about that. But my take was that the area, since we're not really talking about an area which has exclusion areas. In other words, the whole area is one area. You could walk into that area, you could set any place, and you could consider it to be open space. Whether it has an historical component, a horticultural component, or any other component that was involved. These areas are not exclusive. They run into one another. And furthermore, they're not large concrete pads, so that it won't turn itself into a skate park eventually. These will be permeable surfaces We won't have a ton of runoff. Well, we'll have some runoff, of course. The engineers will have to look at that. But the idea was that we wouldn't put another parking lot like concept there that caused us to dispose of a great amount of water every time it rained. So, I mean, with all those things said, I think that's kind of where we were coming from. Now, how one puts that together is an interesting concept. And furthermore, because we have this side deal with the St. Mark's group, we don't know specifically whether that's a graveyard or not, whether the town would actually consider adopting a graveyard or whether it's not a graveyard at all. So there's that area right there, which I think is probably unknown and certainly would preclude us from doing a great deal of on-site work beyond the archaeological study. It would certainly preclude us from doing any work until those kinds of issues were resolved. But guess what? I mean, this is a process. It will evolve into a plan, but right now it's a process. And that's kind of those things that we're looking at within those contexts. I think that's what we're looking at to try to accomplish. Now, I've sat here and pontificated, obviously. I hope people aren't too put off by that sort of thing, but a process and an area where we can accommodate multiple interests with the idea that it will join the rest of the downtown area. It will be used by people who will walk that downtown area. It will actually cause people to walk through that little community, that little downtown area, for example, that may not have walked through there before. So it's a centerpiece for getting a few things done, especially if the sidewalks that are being planned right there at the red light and through other areas of those things can also be joined. Now we will begin to have a walkable downtown area, which is, I think, probably a first. And if that happens, unlike other parks which have been developed in town, which you have to drive to and then try to find parking, this may very well be an area where people can actually process to, so to speak, and utilize for all sorts of reasons. Ta-da.
Sounds like a wonderful summation and a really good sense of the flow that you would like to see in this area for the town and also for its uses. And thank you for pointing out that the library has needs that we would love to see that piece of land helping out with. I think that would be great.
Well, I think it beats having it paved over and having buses parked there during events over at St. Mark's, which my concern is that is exactly what could transpire if we're not careful here. We really have to do something here with this park. And it probably means that we have to have a great deal of with engagement, agreement within the community, because I think there's already a sense based on the town meeting that people don't want to spend the money to do anything there because, and there are tons of reasons that they could tick off on this because section. And so if we're not careful, we're going to end up with a bus parking lot there.
Yes, agreed. And it's also I'm a real believer in full transparency for what we're doing and why we're doing it. Every single thing. It's 8:35. This is a quote short meeting, but Freddie, could we please hear from you about your conceptualization with the plantings in this area, either under the original VHB plan or other concepts you could see expanding it to that would meet the needs of the town?
Yes and no. I think that the need to understand why the Open Space Preservation Commission has chosen to focus on native plants would take more time than this committee has in a meeting. And what the Open Space Preservation Commission discussed at our last meeting was that maybe the best way to do that would be to put together a little Zoom video PowerPoint presentation that members could watch at their own, on their own time, or put it together concisely to show you in a short period of time at a meeting. But the reason I'm saying this is because we have been hearing whispers, or not so quiet whispers, of pushback against the native plant component of this project that was there from the beginning. So that's, I think, the reasons why it's critical to use native plants, straight species, non-cultivars, deserves understanding from the committee and the community as well, although many people in town do understand more and more as the publicity nationally, locally continues. But the concept that the Open Space Commission had for the park, we were given a proposal that they could put in a pollinator garden. And our concept was only between the garden and all of the plantings that weren't lawn would be native straight species. Towns across the Commonwealth are adopting this as bylaws for all their public spaces. I think the commission believes that we should do on our own public land what we now require developers to do in site plans, that we shouldn't be having a separate standard that you have to do this, but we don't need to, because it should be in public parks. So that's our perspective. As far as whether there's a garden there or where the plantings are, that is part of this committee's chart. We never planned where that garden was or what was in it. We were just checking to make sure everything was native straight.
So
There's one other-
basically, sorry, but VHB gave you the plan and said you have this area and this area. Is that how it worked?
No. We saw the plan. We have this area. We just saw the plan like everyone else. And there were plants in the plan, and we looked at the plants in the plan, and we're in the process of making recommendations to ensure, like there were some cultivars, some that maybe weren't quite native to New England. We were making recommendations on those. We did not design where there was a garden, where there were trees. We were just looking at, reviewing the content, right? We didn't say, put a garden here, or put a garden there. None of that was anything we looked at or weighed in on. However, for this committee, there is one area that we might recommend that you look at specifically, and that is, and you are aware of this, Marguerite, it appears to be an underground spring that surfaces. The water table is very high in that area. The lawn area over by where the backside of the the old burial ground where the pollinator garden is, a week after it rains, that sometimes is still coming up from the ground with water. It's like there's an underground stream there. You can go to that corner. Do you know where the ugly, unsightly electrical boxes are? I think maybe looking at something there could be part of this, but in that area, there's a depression, and that, it's not even just coming up there. Sometimes in that area on the parking lot pavement, the water is coming up and then it flows across the parking lot down towards the library building like a stream. If we look at that area where that water, that depression that fills up like a little pond sometimes, that could be mitigated with native plant and a rain garden type situation. So you would have the benefit of dealing with some of the water, as well as having the native plant component that is important to have on any public land, in addition to all of the trees and any plantings there being native straight species. There's no reason not to do it. Whatever plan and concept you come up with, you can do it with native plants. There's no reason not to use straight species.
So I think that we paste that, and it is in the triangle. It's not on library property.
But it was not part of the other plan.
Exactly.
It
So
was,
I
it
think
was
that
left out.
would be heaven sent as far as the library was concerned.
When we looked at it, because it wasn't on the plan, it wasn't until you and I, Marguerite, went out and sort of looked at the plan to where the boundaries actually are. We
Mhm.
thought that was on the back part of the library grounds. And I don't think there was any plan, even though there's those other water dealing, what do you call them? The infiltration or whatever those systems
They're
are,
like sumps. They're like
Right.
sumps or something. Yeah.
whatever those things are. There was not something mechanical planned for this area. And there's wonderful things they do nowadays with, these types of areas with native plantings. So, and also maybe it has to be looked at engineer wise, if a bioretention area, if that needs to be built or something, but you need an engineer to look at, or a specialist to look at that.
Well,
So that's my
it would
perspective.
certainly solve hundreds of years of flooding there if
Well,
something could be done. That would be wonderful.
let me not build your hopes up too high. When you underground and bury a stream and nobody knows where it is, we can make it better, but I don't know that we can fix it. And I think what Karen has already done with those structures may help a little bit. I mean, it should help, right? I don't mean to be disparaging. Not may help. It will help, but I don't think it's going to help that water that's, constantly, surfacing. It's a very high water table. And you can't change the geology.
Yeah,
So
it
thank
is. Well, what I guess I'm asking you is if you were able to conceptualize more changes using native plants in a different design, it seems like you'd be really, it would be extremely useful to hear what you had to say
Could
about
I,
what could be done with that.
may I say that the issue with the native plant, and this is where people get confused, it's
Mhm.
not like we have to make a design for the native plants. It's that the design you come up with can, of course, utilize native plants instead of non-native plants. Like if you want, like Bill Sines was talking about sound, I think, screening, or
Mhm.
that can be done with native plants. Shade can be done with native plants. The only thing that really isn't well suited for native plants is a lawn area with heavy traffic of walking, right? Because that's lawn, and most lawns, grass is not native. But you can, one of the things, I'll just throw this out there, one of the things you will see in town on back roads in the old farmland are these magnificent old oak trees with spreading branches. We refer to them as lone wolves. That's a Yale term. In old pastures, they would leave one tree to grow very big so the cows and the workers or the sheep could sit under it. And then if you have the new forest next to it growing up with these very narrow oak trees, when you tell someone it's the same tree, they can't believe it if they don't understand that it's because they don't have the room to grow. And because we don't have old pastures or fields, those trees, which are now, they have an end life, they're going to be gone from our landscape. And why not consider planting? When's the best time to plant a tree? Was yesterday, right? And back many years ago in the old farms, they would plant a tree when they built the farmhouse, 2 trees for the husband and wife. And you can still see some of those trees today. They're heritage trees across the state. Why not consider planting a heritage tree in there as part of a memorial? And you could have maybe some plaques around it. That's just one idea. But aside from that, I have no concept for how to utilize native plants beyond when this committee comes up and the townspeople come up with a design they want for the land, that if you have trees over here, those trees are native and we find the best tree. And when you say come up with a plan, well, it depends. Is it north facing, south facing? Is there shade? Is it salt tolerant? you know, it depends where on the property it is before you start choosing the landscape. And that's where your, you know, your VHB and landscape architect can help. But there's no reason people have this feeling that you can't use native trees. It's just not true, right? It just hasn't been done. Native shrubs, it just hasn't been done. And it does require maybe some different maintenance practices, but that's the way the world's going. But I can describe that in another time because you don't have time for it tonight. Thank
Well,
you.
is there anyone on our working group who's not familiar with the work that Freddie is doing?
I'm familiar and I fully support using native plants in the design.
Absolutely. I think we're all the choir, Freddie, and we are total believers as far as that's concerned. So, I love the idea of an oak tree.
And that's just an idea. I mean, but
Yeah.
I will say one thing, since we put in that pollinator preservation garden at the library
Mm.
from last year to just having 2 first species that came into bloom, we increased the biodiversity of native bees by 300% from last year. So, you know, this is significant work that needs to be done, not just here in Southborough, but, and people are following what we're doing in Southborough actually. So it's important work. There's a new report that came out that the Native Plant Biodiversity Initiative is as important as climate change as far as the future of when you think how important, you know, what's happening with climate change, the loss of biodiversity is just as critically important, and they're not the same thing. So this is something we can start to do something about right here in town. So
Well, it would be good if we could do it right in the middle of town in a place that a lot of people used.
we thank the library for starting it in the middle of town in a very public space.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It is visible, that's for sure. So let's see what else we can do. All right, so if it's okay with everybody, I would like to have a conversation about setting our regular meeting dates at a time when it works for everyone. Once a month gonna work for meetings? What do you think?
I'd actually like to meet a little more frequently than that.
More than that? Every
Might
2
as well.
weeks? What do you think? Every 2 weeks?
Yes, I think Thursday every 2 weeks sounds good. I'm wondering if instead of at 7:30, we can meet at 7 possibly.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Do
fine.
you
with me.
want to keep it on a Thursday or do you want to change to another day?
I would prefer to keep on Thursday. I know I can't do Tuesday nights. And
Yes.
people are on different boards, and for whatever reason, this seemed to work for everyone. So
Yeah. So how about well, if we do the first and third Thursday, that the select board is meeting on the 7th of July, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
14th,
yeah.
we can meet on the 14th.
Okay, so how about the second and fourth Thursday of every month? How's that?
Okay.
So that would be the 14th of July and the 28th of July. And then for August, it would be the 11th of August. And it would be the 25th. And then should we visit in September or should we keep going?
I think that plan works good for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
And-
the 14th of July, right?
Okay, it's yes, July 14th and July 28th and August 11th and August 25th at 7 p.m.
Great.
We good?
And then Marguerite, for the next meeting, obviously we'll take care of the minutes. And then, I mean, I liked Grant's idea about, this was like a thread that was put out there that we never kind of wrapped up, which was each person has like a list of, I mean, basically just the whole exercise that we're talking about. Like,
Yes.
what are the priorities? And then we talk about them and maybe one person is like a scribe and just orders them in a certain priority or?
All right,
Yeah, I think that's great.
all right. Grant, you want to be the scribe?
Sure, I don't
A
mind.
virtual whiteboard.
What
That would
about
be-
if we all email them to you?
Yes, and I
Okay,
could either do some.
Would that
sort of
work? Does
numbering
that work
system
for
of-
everybody? I think that would save a lot of scrambling around with the technology, at least on this end. So what if we all emailed to you our list of priorities for that space?
Sure.
And,
And
let's,
it's up to you whether or not you would want them ranked or not. I think it might, well, yeah, I'm not sure if we would
Well, that'll
want them or not, or just whether or not we think they should be there. What do you think, Andrew?
I like James's idea of ordered priorities. I think that, and that'll be something that might get a little bit, more disagreement. But I have some things here that I think are more kind of like non-negotiable, and then from my own personal view, and then we just talk about it, and then maybe we see if we get something like by the list. It doesn't have to be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Even
Yeah.
just like almost tiers of things.
Must
Things-
haves, like to have,
Yeah, exactly.
I hate, things I hate or something. Yeah.
Things I hate. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so you guys can email that to me at my town email address. And
Okay.
Okay, thank you for doing that. It won't be as.
So that's our homework assignment.
Yeah,
Yes, that'll be our homework assignment. All right, any other members like to comment while we're all still here?
I'm sorry, did you just say we're supposed to put things I hate in our priorities? Is that, or did I mishear?
I think that was a bit of sarcasm.
the
on
ideas
Ben's part.
that, well, of the ideas that we've talked about, things that you really don't like, perhaps could be useful, I think. Like, for example, say if you hate the idea of an amphitheater or whatever, that's just an example, and everybody else loves an amphitheater, it'd be good to know that you don't like that. So I wasn't really kidding, but not everything in the world, just, things that have been discussed.
Lima beans,
I
right?
just want to say liver, but
That's good. All right, so that should work out well. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay,
We have
second from Grant.
we have 3 participants in the audience. I don't know.
Oh my God, we do. Oh, Andrew, I can't see it.
Marcy Jones, Mimi Luttrell, and Sam Stivers.
All right.
Speak now or forever hold your peace for 2 more weeks, or until another town meeting where we'll see you at another time.
All right, I make a motion to
Seeing no affirmative responses.
No affirmative responses? Are we? Oh, okay. I can't see since Andrew is
And
the.
I just want to thank everyone for meeting, on the evening right before the cusp of the 4th of July weekend. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Good.
So-
I think we're getting there, people. All right.
Harrington moves to adjourn. I second.
All right. All those in favor, Landry, aye. Dennington,
Hi.
Nichols Worley,
Aye.
Mr. Sines,
Hi,
Mr. Farrington,
Aye.
Ms. Gillespie.
yes.
Did I leave anyone out? Yeah, I
Aye.
counted 4 people over here. Who?
Me, aye.
There, you see, that's the trouble. My stupid thing it's like a Scrabble thing. You can only get 7 letters up there. Sorry. All right. I will see you on the 14th. Have a
Thank
good
you,
Fourth,
everybody.
everybody. All right. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Have a good night.